Thank you so much for joining the Wild and Precious Life series tonight. As always, you're going to love what you hear tonight. So we're going to get right into it. And I'm going to introduce our first reader of the evening, Trey Rhone. And Trey, for your introduction, I also didn't realize we had something in common. Well, we have a lot in common because we're both gay, South Florida, but we're both from Georgia. That was the thing. I was like, I did not realize that. Even though I've talked to you multiple times, I don't think that has ever come up. So I won't hold it against you that you're from Augusta and I'm from Calhoun. Not that they're rivals or anything, but we all have to root for our hometowns, I think. I'm going to share two things for your introduction. You had a group of essays published, and I'm going to read a very small excerpt from an essay called Dear Men on Grindr Who've Done Me Wrong. All the essays are great, but this part just really stood out for me, and that's why I wanted to read it. And then I'm going to read one of your poems to finish off your introduction. Again, it's from Dear Men on Grindr Who've Done Me Wrong. Mask for mask means I'm queer and homophobic. It means I'm out of the closet, but still deep in a gym locker. It means I'm a fag, but not like those other ones. It means I'm white and straight passing, the ultimate sign of privilege in the queer community. It means I'm the better gay. And your poem that I want to share, I picked this because of how it's exploring the impacts of war in its own way. The science of war. I learned about human anatomy when I was 7 years old, not because I wanted to, but because it's hard not to notice the body strewn all around the playground. Did you know that the small intestine is about 20 feet long? Learned that one when a mortar shell hit the local recreational center. Gallbladders look like pears if you tilt your head a bit. I wish for times when I didn't know that a human heart was roughly the size of a fist, or that the eyes and tongue swell after one passes. But that's the price of freedom, I suppose. They get pats on their patriotic backs while us kids are left to play on bloody swing sets and sandboxes surrounded by the corpses of soon to be cadavers. The screen is yours. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hey, thank you so much, Justin. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. There's a lot of people in here that I do know. And I'm just always, again, thank you so much, Justin. Dustin's been a pleasure to have in my life so far ever since met him through Julie. And yeah, and I feel awkward whenever I get praised, but yes. I Dustin said that we have 15 minutes. I'm gonna try to use all those. And I do have a couple of poems planned out. One of those is actually an essay because I consider myself like a multi-genres. And yeah, there is going to be like a sort of an arc. So hopefully you hear it or like see it when I read it. So this first one I wrote after, being in the schools, because, it's a lot different from being in a college than being into like a K-8 school. And it's sometimes you have to do those drills that may seem really dangerous, and sometimes kids don't seem to pay it with as much heed as they should, or don't seem to think it's important. And so I try to drill it into them, and then this kind of reminds me of a time like that. This is called Teaching Long Division in Florida. Now when we divide decimals, let's pretend that dot isn't there. That decimal is gone but not forgotten. We need this number whole. We need this body whole. When we divide, these numbers will drop and drop and drop until we hit zero, until there's nothing left of the divisor or dividend. We put what remains on top, on display for all to see. The answer, the constant. There are always remainders in math, in Florida, and in the US. Later, when we took the kids down for picture day, and after everyone was shot and made pristine and were captured and preserved in a moment for eternity, a student looked at a drawing on the wall and said, "Mr. Rhone, what does We'll Remember Parkland mean?" And to continue this kind of like political theme, this is the next one, which is called Black History Month, a slice of American pie. I promise all these aren't sad, all these aren't depressing. I do have a little bit of humor here and there. Yeah, so Black History Month, a slice of American pie. But what kind of pie should it be? I know, let's make the kind that's always at cookouts. Pecan or sweet potato. None of that rhubarb bullshit. Now I argue for a whole pie rather than a slice, but you know white folks aren't good at math. They think that 3/5 is equal to one. They believe 28 days makes up for hundreds of years. Don't invite them to the cookout. Don't bring them a slice wrapped in tinfoil. Don't even share the recipe. They have a whole pie to themselves. Why y'all got y'all's own slice? Why y'all's different than ours? I voted for Kamala and Obama, so I should get a piece. My black friends always let me get some. We're forced to share our slice with lovers, with presidents who own slaves, with Ronald fucking Reagan. I think sometimes it's fine to gatekeep a little. After our slice is gone, they'll still want more. Wanting like waiting like cul-de-sac kids in bushes and under windowsills. Easier to steal them than it is to ask or imitate. Our pies have always been baked with blood, sweat, and tears. Yep, Ronald Reagan. Shout out. And then speaking of Ronald Reagan, here he goes again. This one's called Hell in America's Actor in Chief. When I go to hell, I'll have my sight set on one person. Fuck the screams of the damned and the smell of bodies being covered in tar. I'm going straight to the ninth circle. I'm going to challenge Ronald Reagan to a boxing match. I'm sure he'll be pleased to punish a black queer such as myself. He won't be able to just say no to this. This fight might not be very laissez-faire, but this man who died at 95 deserves it. Sweat will trickle down my body as I deliver blow after blow to this bastard. Why did you put black people in jail? Left hook. Why didn't you save people dying of AIDS? Right hook. Why did you veto the Civil Rights Restoration Act? Jab. How did you survive the assassination attempt? Uppercut. All these questions will probably go unanswered, and he'll end up just like Mr. Gorbachev with his defensive walls coming down. He'll lay there all battered and bruised. I hope he dies again. He'll be sent to another hell. Hell squared. Super hell. He'll be in good company at least. Margaret Thatcher will be there, as will almost every US president, and all the people who don't use their turn signals. I'll be brought back to life due to my heroic deed. My eyes will be set on another man, though, John Hinckley Jr. I ask him a simple question. Are you single? He may be 43 years my senior, but hey, he has my type. uh, Next up is Laika Couldn't Speak. If you guys don't know, Laika was this dog from Moscow and was the first animal to orbit Earth. But when they built the spacecraft, they didn't design it to come back. So Laika unfortunately died from overheating while in space. Laika can speak, not like you and I could. Laika losing air, Laika yelping, frightened, Laika wishing those strange men who petted and fed and promised her a new life would have kept her grounded, running on earth, not helplessly in air. Laika couldn't speak, but the scientists spoke on her behalf. The scientists claimed Laika's survival was never expected. But isn't that true for all of us? Laika couldn't speak, but I like to imagine that for once, in the last moments of her life, she became a cosmic werewolf. That way, she'd be able to look at the moon just as she did from Earth. She'd be able to tell the moon, "You're beautiful." If you're ever stargazing, be on the lookout for the Sirius. Tell her she's such a good girl. Gaze upon her beauty and recall how a minor dog became the Canis Major. Cool. Yeah, I'm still doing good on time, so gonna keep on chugging along. Um, this one is called I Wish I Came Back Over. And It's a dark night out and it's sleeting. No, not sleeting, spitting. It's what my friend called it, as it doesn't sleet in Canada, but it's prone to spit like the man did on the corner of Albert and University Avenue while I was on my way to see a man who'd spit after we were done. I had a time limit, a couple of hours before I headed back to the States, a couple of hours I needed to spend packing, and a couple of hours I needed to find a man who could make me feel like a man in this great white north and could show me a bit of kindness and maybe a bit of warmth. Don't look at the couples. Don't look at the people holding each other's hands and arms inside the sushi place and not wandering around at night looking for a quick connection. That's why I stare at my phone looking for a quick connection, looking for some Wi-Fi since I didn't buy the plan. It's cold, but I stay warm with the headlights of passing cars, not because they offer heat, but because I imagine the people inside judging me, judging this one out of place, queer Black man going out to sin, and those sins keep me warm and make this journey bearable. And my phone shuts off on the way back. Said it was too cold out. Unlike the man who invited me into his home and smelled of safety, unlike the man on hemlock and balsam who gave his jacket to his partner, but like the guy who broke up with me during a walk like this because I said, I love you 3 months in. And like me, who didn't respond to the guy smelling of safety when he asked me to come back over so we can go a little bit further. And love isn't meant to have an expiration date. There's no one counting down the hours, the minutes, the seconds until it's over. But ever since that guy of 3 months started counting, so did I. And I count the minutes it takes to walk to a new man's house. I count how long we dwell in sin. And I count how long it takes for me to ghost him. You may smell of warmth and scream of safety, but I have a plane to catch in a place that's so much warmer than here. uh, Going back to the connection that Dustin made earlier, that yes, even though like Florida's not the South, I'm sorry if anyone's from Florida. Florida's its own, or at least maybe North Florida. North Florida is the South. Miami, not the South. Miami's its own thing. But so Georgia's definitely the South. So this one's called "In the South, We Kill Love Bugs" because love bugs are everywhere. You don't want to be there during love bug season. They'll mate on you, on your car, on all the doors and entryways. Love bugs are awful. In the South, we kill love bugs as they fuck everywhere and are fucking everywhere. They're connected ass to ass and fuck their lives away. They fuck on top of cars, in doorways, on benches, and they'll fuck on top of you if you're not careful. You'll become part of their natural exhibitionism. They just fuck and die, and I'm jealous. After all, they're just fucking bugs. And I just have three more, and then then we'll pass on to the next one. This next one is called "The Moon Says." The moon doesn't speak, so we speak for the moon. Lovers too nervous to speak their mind, too nervous to combine their shaking hands, too nervous to grab the other's face, feel the bones in their jaw, their cheeks, feel their pores and the hair poking through from a fresh shave. Instead of saying, I love you, in Japanese, they say, the moon is beautiful. This one is called Bacchanalia. If you don't know, Bacchanalia is like it's like a big party celebration of the god of wine and revelry, Bacchus. Yes. So this one's called Bacchanalia. Let's pretend that every night is Bacchanalia. Let's get wine drunk on whatever's on sale or that $2 Aldi wine. Let's drink to we're the ones winking at the owl on the bottle. Let's fill these balloons with wine and make wine grenades. They'll explode on impact and induce more drunk revelry. Let's plant the flowers we give each other every other week with wine. When they bloom in some purple moonlight due to Bacchus or yellow moonlight due to his piss, let's use them as a bouquet. We'll take our drunk and love-fueled bender to Nevada, get Elvis contact drunk from our sweat and breath, and give slurred I do's to one another. Let's cross arms, give a toast, lock lips, and do it all over again, like we do every night, like it's a first love, till we actually exchange rings and say an eternal I do. Cool. Uh, and this last one, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for enjoying so far. This is the last one that I have. I think it's really weird that I ended up loving this one because I don't like form. I'm very anti-form. And this one was, cannot remember. Yeah, was a Pantone. I think it was a Pantone. It was one of the ones where you have a word bank and got to keep going. I know I'm failing my poetry professors right now because it left my mind. I cannot remember, but I hate it. It just goes from margin to margin. But I also love music, so I'm going to include music in here. So this is called "Wondering About Heaven," and it has lines from Tupac's "I Wonder If Heaven Got a Ghetto" and Kendrick Lamar's "Money Trees." I wonder if heaven got a ghetto where the bullet holes, gashes, and trauma on our boys are nowhere to be seen. This ain't no police state. No guns or pigs up here wiping the wonder from our kids' eyes. There's no price on items in the stores. Can't get accused of stealing orange juice, cigarettes, something that puts a cold piece of steel in our faces. I don't believe in segregation, but if you use ghetto derogatorily and you're not black, then God needs to double your price of admission. You belong up here, especially if you love boys, boys, boys with interlocked fingers, dress up in divine drag, and wear wigs so wonderful that the clacking of the Angels fans will be heard in even the reddest of states. No tears should be shed up here unless they're from laughter. Don't be devastated that you've been declared dead. We're black. We've been steeling ourselves for moments like these. Don't let your mind wonder who is or isn't up here. Rejoice in the fact that you're here. Turn up the ghetto blasters to whatever music you desire. God doesn't mind a little ass shaking or some rap boy on the mic singing about how much a dollar cost, and that 40 acres is our price for reparations. Maybe we should update that and come up with a new price. Maybe not one as dramatic as Jesus on the cross paying for our sins as some grand statement. Maybe we can get some pit bulls with gold chains on them. Gotta bling out the good boys. Anything would be better than the dust we've been paid with so far. Maybe we could stealthily invade white heaven, take their paintings of white Jesus, deface their lawns, make this their ghetto. Let them clutch their purses and pearls, leave them wondering how a place as pristine and white and full of supposed wonderment ended up being so hood, so urban, so black. The looks on their faces would be priceless. Matter of fact, why stop at just white heaven? Let's ghettoize all heavens. Let's pimp out the angels' chariots. Let the bass blare down the golden interstate. Bring out our choirs to their service and watch how rhythm is the one thing they can't steal. Let's meet them on the course of our winged Nikes and still prove that white boys can't jump. I so hope that heaven is like the movies, not no Oscar bait drama for our boys, but rather one of the ones where all the dogs go to, where every dream or wish you wondered is laid upon some cloud or under your heavenly bed, where no boogeyman or white man can steal it from you. We black people come with barcodes and will always have some price gun or red light or laser sight that will tell us how much our bodies cost. Kendrick Lamar states, "The one in front of the gun lives forever." And I guess he's right. So is Tupac about ghettos and heaven. All I know is that when this black boy dies, his price of admission will be to kiss all the boys he's ever wondered about. A statement of billing issued, showing all the kisses he's ever stolen and how often he's been called ghetto. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Trey. Our next reader that I'm going to introduce is Randall Mann. And I was looking back, Randall, and it looks like you read in April 2021. So that was around our 1 year celebration of the Wild and Precious Life. So it's great to have you back. For your introduction, I'm going to read an excerpt of two different interviews. I really just try to break it down to one, but at the end of the day, it's my series and I get to do whatever the fuck I want. So I'm going to read both. So in March of 2014, as part of an interview, you're asked, your poems stage a concern with the queer code. What do you think compels the homosexual in society to adopt and deploy a distinct set of manners and language that would seem to constitute a code? And this is what you had to say. I hesitate to speak about the homosexual in society, although I rather like that dated phrase. It sounds like an expose from the 1960s, but I can say that for me, code is a way to survive. Push against silence. Name a predilection without naming it. When one is marginalized, things, of course, are not what they are at baseline. So one must traffic in metaphor, the casual look that might also be inquiry and proposition, the friend of Dorothy doublespeak, the color of an article of clothing, more than fashion. Let's go to January 2017. There was a question and an answer that you gave that I liked, and so this will wrap out your introduction. When did you first begin writing about queerness? Did you have to overcome any anxiety about revealing your own sexual identity through your work? And this is what you had to say. I started writing directly about it as an undergraduate, though none of those poems survived. Hell, I barely survived. And some of the gay themed poems in my first book were written over 20 years ago now. I don't remember having any problems with self-identity in my poems, though I think as I look at older poems, the work mirrored the coming out process. In other words, queer poems I wrote 20 years ago seem to use their very queerness as argument, whereas later, as I came to know myself better, the homo hovered in the background of everything, like a guardian, or sometimes a threat. Thank you for being here tonight. The screen is yours.
Thanks, Dustin. Those are fun quotes. I don't ever remember these things, and I always like cringe a little because I don't know what's coming. So so thanks for the intro. Trey, it was so great to hear you. Lauren, I can't wait to hear you. So yeah, so let me just get into it. I had a book come out in May, and it was a bit of a retrospective. So I'm going to read the title poem of that. Can you hear me okay? Volume all right? Great. So this has an epigraph from Ed Smith. The sun sets, we are all robots, market forces. Deal. Eating cereal over the sink, I think this is what's real. The urgent piss, the grout, like doubt. By now, anonymous, no gent, is in his lift. Adrift. This fall, all the kids want to shoot vids, amateur auteurs, little hard godards, to boot, spittle, my haunt. I want my hair and a split somewhere between mathematics and tricks buried in the yard. The dream, a multi-level scheme. Get a shovel. I shrivel by bleak acronym, boutique gym, commie leak, Jimmy hats, metallic antibiotic, lost chats on a hill. A hell of passive investors, reboot love with massive clawback provisions, money dripping off your robot back. The monsters, my stars. All right. Stocking points. The coldest August in memory, a lack of trust. The lumber of a streetcar, neither here nor there, near nor far. The bros in boas are turning back to Burning Man. Sidewalks slumber. Take a number, allege your size. On my commute, I saw you edge a stranger raw, then sanitize those hands the minute you got off the F line. Awe. The rage, engage in character fights, dim the pain like all the lights. Who doesn't want to be walked by a brute in a suit out of the high rise? Who doesn't want to be stalked? So, Trey, you mentioned Ronald Reagan, so I feel like I need to read this poem. And you also mentioned form, and I appreciate you sort of talking about your resistance to it. And I write formally, but I really see form as a configuration. Form is architecture. Form is another word for choice. And everybody makes choices in poems, so everybody writes formally. Young Republican. September 1984. The heat was like a ray gun. The communists had much to fear. His name was Ronald Reagan. And so was mine in middle school throughout the mock debate. The recreation hall was full of Democratic hate. I ended all my thoughts with, well, declared my love for Nancy. My stifling suit was poly wool. I sounded like a pansy. But teachers didn't seem to care that Ronald Reagan looked a little fey and had some flair. I wanted to be liked. The boy who mowed the neighbors' yards, the new kid in Ocala. While Mondale read his index cards, I sipped a Coca-Cola that I had spiked with mother's gin and frowned and shook my head. Oh, Walter, there you go again, I smiled and vainly said. I reenacted getting shot. I threw benign grenades. I covered up what I forgot. I never mentioned AIDS. All right. The scene. 1. I weigh in like a boxer. I prompt. A split lip of simile, a formality. Then say, done and done, post money. Redundancy, the poverty T closer to role play. Disparity, what pulls away. American money, so green and dull, but as we all know, dullness wins eventually. One nation of hydration, bluffs, and rotator cuffs. 2. Later, my slightly younger neighbor will come over in character and shorts. He calls me Coach. The scene reveals a patch of itch under his jock. I'm no fool. Ketoconazole will never break. A performance where every nobody wins, mild to regret my statuette. It isn't even all that fun. fun ends when you let them in. 3, men like us are forever grieving. Loss isn't loss, it's a limited series. Episode 1, sequins. 2, a bruise. Number you know the rest. Garishly shot like never. I have a small window. It's not bird time yet, but it is bird weather. My wingspan cuddlesome, gross, and my own special motiveless malignity. Dignity, I'm here for fun and friends. 4, near beer, tight ends, night bends. I know it's late for a love game, which isn't sadness or freedom. It's a feeling that precedes feeling, a narcotic urge of mythic injury. I'm a coach without advice. The balm, go on. Just a couple more. So speaking of Grindr, because we're always speaking of Grindr, so I was on Grindr and I saw this profile and it cracked me the fuck up. And so I wrote down the header, and that's the epigraph of this poem. Also, trigger warning, I've been writing villanelles. This is the epigraph. If you can remember the Cold War, you're too old for me. Cold War. Because you're 22 and in your prime, you silently refuse to date or date. When war was cold, I had a lovely time. I messaged you and sent a shot of grime, then shot some more. It must have been too late. Because you're 22 and in your prime, perhaps. I'm shifting like a paradigm. And all the new assumptions formulate as if our war were cold. A lovely time. I'll exercise my stock internal rhyme. The currency is yours to circulate. I'm 49, my interest rate is prime. Suppose that poverty is not a crime. Suppose you more or less accommodate like war. When cold, we'll have a lovely time. Perhaps you'll click on me in wintertime. Proximity is constant. So is fate. Was I 22? Before my prime, the war was cold. I had a lovely time. All right, and I will end with this poem. A step past disco. I took a step past disco, could still discern the strings, the horn, like a burn slow to heal. Infectious, the hook, already curled in the body like a comma or a buddy. I clicked, unclicked, hope of velvet rope. Disco, lyrics either for just one night or love for life, no in between. The drama. I am between, young enough not to have lost all my friends, old enough to have felt, I feel, any moment the ferryman will visit. Rock the boat, don't rock the boat. Disco, I took a step. It's been years. of forcing functions, token liberation, coercing conjunctions, and stroking myself, the celluloid dead, my valuation, avoid. Men come disposable as thumbs, opposable as income. The ones I met, a data set of none. Nay, nay, Fluffy, they used to say. Who are they? Crooked lashes, side eye like a dash, broken wishes, the dance, the outline of religion, and splashes of G-Nate choking the air. Fragments like errors, the distance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Randall. I can never tire of hearing you read that Villanelle. I think you read that at Hudson Valley. I'm also a sucker for Villanelles. It's amazing. Before I introduce our last reader of the evening, it's where I do those little reminders. So if you don't have it, save our link tree. You can Google Wild and Precious Life link tree if you would like to find that. If you're watching this video, or just go to wildandpreciouslife.com. wildandpreciouslifeseries.com might help if I add that, last word in there, but that will get you to our YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that fun stuff. And then our next reading will be on the 13th of September with Donica Kelly, Carl Phillips, and Paul Tran. So our last fabulous reader of the evening is Lauren Camp. And Lauren, I was looking back, you featured back in the Wild and Precious Life series in July of 2020, which was actually only our 4th month in existence. So thank you for giving me a chance way back then when it was so brand new. A lot has changed. The promotions have gotten better, at least I hope. Everybody just wink and nod and say they have and make me feel better. You find what works and you just keep building on it. So I want to say thank you for taking a chance way back then and agreeing to come back. So for your introduction, once again, I had 2 things and I said, fuck it, I'm going to do both of them because I run the show. The 2 quotes that I just could not decide between that just really struck me in the moment when I was reading them. So I'm going to take you back to July 2016 first. And everyone, you're going to hear me say this book when I am getting into the setup for the question. And when I say this book, the interviewer is actually referring to Lauren's book, 100 Hungers, just for a point of reference. So the interviewer says, the poet Naomi Shebnai once said, politics involves the dignity of daily life. To me, politics is how somebody carries himself or herself, regardless of the surrounding situation. In this book, and in your previous one, apologies. In this book and in your previous one, The Dailiness, you focus on single moments that allow you to sink into another's life. Do you consider that witnessing a political act? And this is what you had to say. The individual perspective has always compelled me. The emotional place I live is a psychology of another and also of self. I'm not as comfortable in groups. There's so much stimulus in those situations, and I rarely know how to take it all in. One-on-one, I'm able to attend to a small behavior issue and the very human reactions to that. I often wonder if I'm political enough, but I know that a singular perspective helps each of us better understand the epic. It doesn't work the other way around. We can't break down the story of a whole community because we can't put a face to it, but we can expand from one to many. So let's jump forward to November 2020. And you were asked, do you consider yourself a poet of landscapes? And I really enjoyed how you answered that. And so I will close out your introduction with what you said. What am I a poet of? Here's what I know. When I made art, I used to be unnerved when a design came too easily. I like the effort of crafting something, of sharpening its teeth or finding its center, or whatever it is that I'm missing at the start. Poetry isn't simple, and that's fine with me because simple doesn't interest me. I certainly write about landscapes, but also innerscapes, mindscapes, worryscapes, and pleasurescapes. Maybe I'm a poet of questions or of gaps. Is this why I prefer the landscape where I live? The desert is complicated, unknowable. It's empty and somehow simultaneously full. And even if I keep looking at it, walking it, paying attention, I won't figure it out. All I'll be able to do is put some words to it. And I know these words will shift next time the wind opens its throat. Thank you for being here. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much. Randall, I know what you mean about those quotes coming out of nowhere, and you're just hoping you're going to sound intelligent somehow, but it was really lovely to hear them. Dustin, thank you for this series, for Limp Wrist, for everything you do in community and to build community. Trey, thank you for your love poems, and Randall for your poems of rhythms and perspective, or rhythms that layer over perspective. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. So here is my new book. It's called An Eye in Each Square, and it came out in June, mid-June, and I'm going to read a handful of poems from this and then a couple of newer poems. And I will say that the book sort of uses as its muse the artist Agnes Martin. I'm not really looking for biographical information of her, or not. This isn't a biography. I was interested in her paintings and the spaciousness or perhaps emptiness of her paintings. So I was in conversation a lot with her line, which was very often a very thin pencil line that went across these square canvases, or perhaps wide, very pale watercolor bands. And I'm going to read this sort of modified pantoum to stay in the realm of form for a moment. Self-portrait with Agnes Martin. Peripheral desire to just sit here, not only in grief, but half light, late light, prisms of strangers, wanting not more than the inexact, the silence. The world mouth contradicts such distance, tracked as it is with cost and shouting. All light is a prism and an easy absence, and I want not to hold more. A rest to reason. It is very quiet without the grief and shouting. What could be better than distance? All I have to see is enough, above and below. The view is without more reason, and that's how I learned to bend into quiet. Let the mind go on, watch it carry on honestly. Meanwhile, the eye sees enough, knows its options, what is below the vibration of cruel news and common, ceaseless actions. I want to stop following these particulars, carry on in the open, not call to mind what cannot continue, the yelled vibrations and cruel, ceaseless news that invents less of forever. The earth lives under these various spaces in the open, inside itself, inside even what cannot continue. What is more exact? I stare at painted silence. The world mouth contradicts forever. The earth loves plain space, various lessons, wants its soft peripheral desire. I have to just sit here, not only in grief. So the book, I began the book, or the poems in the book, in 2017. We had a new administration. The country was in quite a bit of chaos, no matter what perspective you were looking at it from. But also there was inner chaos. My family was really in the midst of a great upheaval. My father was plummeting into Alzheimer's, and I started this book with a biography of Agnes Martin and a 1-month trip to the ocean, to the Pacific Ocean, and From that, the poems began. To the left of the ocean, I enter the rose and glow under skies double-dyed gray. Previous colors will keep fading. Golden club and grazing geese, sweet clematis, pickerel weed, sheep laurel, inkberry, into thin opinions of darkness. The scandal of nothing but walking through each maple's similar branches. Now, nothing but standing in hushed rooms of sand with shifty light and its conflict. I hasten to keep listening to the breaking blue distance, hearing its lessons. So I wrote probably, I don't know, 100, 150 poems, sort of like letters to Agnes Martin's line. And then as I put the book together, I started pulling out half of them, more than half of them, and including some other things, and realizing how much connection there was. I mean, anyone who's made a book here knows that that can happen, but there were so many interesting connections. This is one of them. It's called Cow. And I'm also reading this because it has the title of the book in the poem, Cow. When we had been driving for hours, a family with an eye in each square of window, and our ability to pick out a gloomy blob in a field, or a field full of blobs, was dark with the faulty between us. My mother called from the front seat, "Kids, cows." And if we lifted up, we might have seen sunset or prayer or her delicate hand in response to the very real view rippling at the surface. The Tao says stillness is easy to maintain, but we were tired of a bearable distance, and nothing ever meant look until years later, when she had become slight in her cheeks and shoulder blades. And just before the oncologist told me, before we had traveled that bleak journey to carry the silence between us, when all that was possible was unsettled and worse, was secure in dissolving, and we couldn't be anywhere else. So if you don't know the paintings of Agnes Martin, do check them out. They are probably not what you expect. And if you do know, you know how much possibility there is to take her paintings and somehow shape it into lines of poetry. I found that it opened up my poems, not in subject matter, not in language even, but in how I wanted the poems to look on the page. So this is one of them. It's really written with the idea of her hand, or at least it's on the page with the idea of her hand drawn line that might have little places where her hand paused and the line starts again. So I'm going to try to read it so you might be able to hear that. The poem is called Flat Statement. And the devotion means laying bare to the score of drift, shiver, possession, unreeling. In the desert, day begins with its discipline and wells to the high point of stones in cinnamon, light, layering, toughened, history over, a region of equivocal shelter. She won't draw this or the sun, defending low. Weeds won't look to calculate a sensible landscape, each variation, or even the shape of a mother, an abandonment that should have been dwelling. rather than claw. If you wander in the desert far enough, you'll find an abyss, and she won't be there either, won't boundary out to true black. The line will tell you flat out she isn't showing you any part of the whole upturned earth or the light that might appear stretched out around her, needing to be seen to make a mark. Okay, one last poem from An Eye in Each Square, and then I'll read you a couple others. Such limit. The spine of the line is drawn as a yank to the opposite side or a weep. Go, go. God ensues, and you withdraw in a truck or a bus, claim a clarity, apology, or armload, and why not call it many years of following some action? Call this line some movement against missing. Call this line the inside, the worst, a blade, a stirp, a hymn, a force. The distance is how you look in the mirror. So I think of the poems in An Eye in Each Square as fairly new. I work on books for a really long time. I change and change and change, but that was a relatively quick process from the start of the poems to the finished book. I think it was, I don't know, 7 years maybe. So I'm going to read you a couple of newer poems. This one is from about 1.5 years ago. It's called Cell Theory. The sun is begging emotion, and we're hazed as pennies beneath it. Every person who is weighed out in the dicey season knows what exists is last year's reduced consonants and the fallow reminder of friends taking 3 views of hard questions. Clouds dispense their rigged backlight, blameless, unceasing, but it must be noted I see only from the mustardy window. Sidewalks go on with the usual onus of old rights. I've got a heart and liver that remember a scandalous companion, and if I never had used them like that, I couldn't have gone between hours until I could finally say after. In those chilled rooms, I left what came to the table behind. The core of my thoughts followed the center of glasses and felt like a skinful of heat. I've told you all this before, and it's fine. It's not that I'm blameless, just the tarnish is done, dragging through its chapters, or so I pretend. And now down the hall, someone has taken a drill to the eggs. She is scalloping a new story I have yet to see. Everyone here is closed in rooms that open with calluses of numbers. Everyone is divining tart moments of detail. Aren't we all in some way devoured? Between parsley bits, we talk about how we are not meant to leave, but we leave for the city, for the entire bargain of rain. Any half-clarified fancy is always my first choice to flash through a diary I refuse to keep, and I store it by first lines and visions. I purvey each separate past, then disguise them together as mash. The train hatch goes on its brief-belled summary. Take apart what I've told you. All the news is about lying, about pushing events into incentives. There is so much metonymy, all of it another bite at an endless permission. There are so many willing participants. Every afternoon, I eat a red apple. When are people not hungry? I lay down outside as it further unbuttons. Thank you all so much for being here. Justin, I was remembering that I came to one of your earliest Wild and Precious Life series, and I sure appreciate being back. So thank you. I'm going to read one last poem. I started it a year ago, roughly. I was lucky enough to spend that entire month at the Grand Canyon as astronomer in residence, which meant basically that I had to write poems about the night skies and darkness. And I found it, stunningly inspiring. So I thought I'd end with this poem. So let me take you to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, 86 light years away. You are inside an equilibrium, inside a legend, or many. As all else is bluing, bats slash without struggle. Dark builds its boundaries, settles at the bottom, then vastly above. In the middle, a jewel blue stripe. On it goes, mitering in. You are inside that equilibrium, that orb over all. Lightning ripens and bisects to the north without clamor. These are your brief concerns. You have put on your winter cap because the air is askew with direction. You see the sky isn't null. The dark darns itself to some traces. You think of everyone you love. A tree leans undressed toward the great expanse. Dark awning, dark buoy. Stars have started their exercise. The eye draws from these some triangles and brushes and dusted animals. Inside the night, a language is decoding. The blue nips into its flavors and moods, becomes a wedge, impossibly closing on one edge. New stars, saffron and tassel. You'll never know more than what leaks out. Before you, the blue road. Very easy. Your ear purposes patterns, the woven sound of cicadas, the lid of a metal garbage can, and dark instead of your eye again with its clarity. The blue has crunched to a line on your left. You are more inside the unlit and read it like a clock. When you look at this, do you understand strength and escape, how to stay, how to emerge? Or is this only an ornate heaven to watch for a while? You will need to pick your steps back. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Lauren. I'm going to put in the chat one last time the links to Randall and Lauren's books. I always tell people best way to support writers is to purchase their products, whether it's books, consulting services, whatever they have. If today is not the day, then I ask maybe save these links. And when you have a few extra dollars to purchase a book, remember these books and make that purchase then. If you enjoyed tonight, which I'm sure that you did, because you just heard the same poems I heard, so I know you had to have enjoyed yourself. All I ask is that you just tell people about the Wild and Precious Life series. Do that on all the social media. Don't want your money, just want you to drop a link to the Wild and Precious Life series, links, call out the Facebook page so that people know about it and will come to future readings. And as I said before, one last plug for our next reading, which if you go to the Wild and Precious Life series.com, look at the schedule tab, you will see that on September 13th, Donica Kelly, Carl Phillips, you've maybe heard of, him since he just won some award. I don't know what that was, just some small award, right? And Paul Tran, all three are fabulous, fierce poets. Because that's really all we have here at the Wild and Precious Life is fabulous and fierce, if I can say so. So I hope you will come back. Hope to see you in September. And be safe out there as COVID cases are starting to climb. So mask up and protect yourself. Have a great evening, everybody.